Hey everybody, welcome back to the Krita class video. Today we're going to go over how to make word balloons in Krita because it's been a while since I've actually done a video like this for word balloons, and I think Krita's in a good place to basically go over this. So real quick, we want to make sure everything we're doing is vector. So we have to go back to our layers and add a vector layer. And the reason for this is you want to make sure it's not rasterized, because if it is, we can't go back and make changes. We can't scale things as easily and have it stay nice and crisp. You want to make sure it's flexible. And using a vector shape is going to be the best way to do it, especially because you want to merge different shapes that we create and separate them later as needed. So for this tutorial, what I suggest is making this file your master word balloon file. There's a book I read, I'll link it down below and I'll put it up on the screen, and the author, Blambot, he suggested always having a master file for your word balloons so you can copy and paste things and not have to recreate them. So that's what I suggest doing in this tutorial. I've already done this in Affinity Designer, so now I'm going to be doing it in Krita as well, because I'm going to be doing some of my comic lettering only in Krita going forward. Alright, so first we're going to go to our shape tool up here. We're going to use the circle. I'm going to go to tool options. So for fill, I'm going to use the foreground color, which is this little icon up here. The white is the foreground and the black is the background. So for outline, if it's on brush or no outline, you want to switch it to brush background color. So if we click and drag our shape now, making sure we're on our vector layer, we basically have started our own speech bubble. So we have a nice black stroke and we have a white fill. And as you can see, we can just go ahead and scale it, no big deal, adjust it however we want, but it's not exactly perfect. So what we want to do is click on our edit shapes tool, this little arrow with little dots, and you can see we have 2 points we can now adjust, but it's not doing what we want. If you right click and select 2 path, we now have 4 points, and we can now click and drag them, and it's doing basically what we would expect by moving these points around. So here is where we can start changing our word balloon, make it maybe a little bit more square so we can have some more space to put letters in. If you wanted this to be, maybe you wanted to add extra points in here for something. Let's say you want this to be a super square word balloon. Maybe you're doing something kind of techy and you want this to be like a robot speech balloon or something. So in our tool options, I have gone over some of the vector options before in other videos, but if you're new to this, we have our curvature settings here on the left, and then the type of points and segments on the right. So you can see here, clicking, it's like only letting me change the direction of one side of this segment here. If I click on the triangle, I can now make this an equal adjustment in both sides of my point. And if I don't care if it's an equal adjustment, I just want like the direction, the rotational direction to be the same, I can click on that middle icon here. If I want to delete the point, I can just delete it. If I click on this segment, I can add a point and it'll be perfectly centered between these 2 points. These are things you'll need to know for making your word balloons. So I'm just going to undo this to get back to where I originally had it. It's pretty close. I liked my word balloons to be like just slightly square, not super round. I just like how that looks better. Just personal preference. There's no right or wrong way as long as you're making sure it fits nicely in your panel. Alright, so now we can go and make adjustments here in our tool options. So let's say I like the shape, I don't like the thickness of the line. I can go and change that in our tool options. I can make a thicker outline for it. I can actually just remove it entirely. I can change the color if you're doing a color version of your comic. Put this back down to, I think, 9. Just because, oops. You right click on the number. There we go. I change the strokes so we can actually see it, because I always do this. Picking the worst colors for tutorials. There we go. It's like a nice red. We can change the line style, so if you want it dashed, we can do that. You may want to do that for maybe inner thoughts or a different tone in the voice, maybe a different voice altogether. And we can add these little decorations here if you want for the different parts of the stroke. So this is like the start, this is the middle, this is the end. At this time, there's no further customization, but for the basics of your word balloons, this is more than enough. And if you want to change the fill, you can. You can actually just change it by clicking on your color selector up here or changing it down in the tab for the fill bucket here. If you want to change the direction, if you want to change the way this looks with the stroke and the fill, this little option down here, if you click on the dotted angled corner, you can change the coordinates and the size here manually if you want to. For word balloons, you want it to be flexible, so I don't think you would ever really need to do that. So if you want to change like how the word balloon looks a little bit, you can play with some of these options here. We have different views of how the stroke and the fill are going to look. So if we go to stroke markers fill, you can see the fill kind of get pulled forward and the stroke is more like, it looks thinner, but it's like behind the fill, which it looks nice, don't get me wrong. This is definitely something you may want to do. So if I go to change this to a different dash, I'm just going to brighten that up so you can see it. You can kind of just layer things a little bit different. All right, so let's say we like this word balloon. It's perfect, exactly the way we want it. We want to leave it where it is. What I like to do is I like to copy and paste it as a base to make different variations of that word balloon. So I'm actually going to just take this dashed stroke and take it off and put it back to black. And I'm just going to put it back so the stroke is like over the fill. And then I like to kind of just play with some of these settings here. Maybe I want something to be longer. There may be a reason why I want my word balloon to be taller than anything else, so I can go ahead and adjust that. Maybe there's just like a lot of talking, a lot of description going on. Who knows? I do that. It's kind of, honestly, these are kind of big, but that's fine. These can all be rescaled, no big deal. All right, so I have 2 word balloons now. Nothing too crazy, nothing really intense. Now I want to make the tails. So the tails are like the little line that comes from the word balloon and directs itself to the character's mouth or maybe off screen to indicate that there's another character not in view speaking. So what these look like, I'm just going to start with a rectangle. I'm actually going to fill this with white and make sure my outline color is black. And I'm going to go back to my Edit Shapes tool, right click to path. I'm actually going to delete one of these points. I'm just going to use this little button up here in my tool options. And now I have a word balloon tail. So the reason you want to keep these separate is you may want to mix and match different word tails with different balloons. Maybe you want one to be like more swirly to indicate maybe someone's tired or a spirit or ghost, and you want to attach that to a word balloon. Or maybe the direction of the tail, you just don't want to like keep having to adjust it for left or right, so it's just nicer to have when you can copy and paste and deal with later. Definitely something I have dealt with myself, where I just don't want to keep editing the tail every time I need it. So I'm just going to make a nice curve for this. Now I'm not going to worry too much how the top of it looks, because when we go to merge these later on, that top's just not going to appear. So I'm going to do a second one here. All right, so we have another tail here. This one's a little more weird. Maybe it's like for a zombie or someone that's like really sick, or maybe pretending to be sick. It's like really janky looking. You know, it's got a fun style to it. So we have 2 of these now. So I'm just going to copy and paste this word balloon. I'm going to use it with this tail just because it has more personality, more like cool appearance. And I'm actually going to shrink this down a little bit. It's a little too square, but that's okay. And I'm going to actually I'm going to make a duplicate so I can have my original. Move those. I'm going to rotate this. So let's say the character somewhere over here. You technically want the point to be pointing at their mouth as often as you can. And where you put the tail on the word balloon is up to you. I try to keep mine center. I just think it looks nicer. I can't always do that depending on how I lay out my panels, but that's kind of like the goal I strive for. So now we have this one issue where we have a line, and these are two separate shapes. We want to merge them into one, so we can shift click, doesn't matter which one, right click. We have logical operations, and we can just unite them. And by doing that, we now have a finalized word balloon. So we can either keep this as its own base, so we can just copy and paste later on and just duplicate. If you want to mirror this, we can make adjustments to it later, whatever we want. So now we just have our finalized word balloon. Very easy to put together, nothing too crazy, and we did it by making just a couple bases ourselves, modifying it, and then merging it to finalize it. And now it's perfect. So the last thing we need to do for our word balloon is basically put the text in there. So we're gonna do our text tool here. I did make a video on the text properties and options. So if you want to go take a look at that to get like a full breakdown of everything, you can. I'm just gonna like do a basic rundown here. So we can either put the text in the shape. So you can see here we have placeholder text. I'm gonna click out and I'm gonna hit undo. The other thing you can do is just click and drag for your text and then manually adjust it later. I prefer that. It's just a personal preference. A lot of people like to just do text within the shape itself. In Illustrator or Affinity InDesign, or Affinity just in general, because it's not one program. I don't like to do that because I like to adjust things manually. So that's what we're gonna do. So today I'm just gonna say, all right, this is kind of silly, but it's fine. So here's my text. This tutorial has made helped me make my comics better. We need to kind of like tweak this a little, so we're gonna go to back to our tool options, open our text properties panel. I'm gonna center this. I'm actually going to adjust the width of my text box manually. So when we're doing lettering, now I'm not like a super professional or anything, but a couple things that I have learned through that book I mentioned earlier is you just want to make it visually pleasing. Typically you don't want like a word in the beginning by itself, but if it looks better that way, then you leave it that way. I don't like this font, so I'm going to change that. I'm going to search for it, which is awesome. There we go. And then that looks better. So I'm actually going to increase the font size a little bit more. Widen this. All right, so this looks pretty good. I don't like the line height, so I'm going to manually adjust that here. I think that's a good size. All right, so that looks pretty good. Now I will say the better way to do this is to do it before you merge your word balloon and the tail. That way when we go to adjust it, we don't have to worry about all these extra points that Krita adds when we unite everything. But for the sake of this video, it's fine. And that's really it. So that's how we can make our word balloons, and in Krita, make our master file. We can adjust things, merge the tail with the bubble, add some basic text. Like I said, I like to do mine separately and not within the shape, but if we were to do it in the shape, I don't know why it was taking so long, but it was taking a while. Okay, back to my text properties. I'm gonna center this. There we go. Sometimes if you click on this little button, it helps reset things. So that way, if you want left aligned, you can go back and do center. The line height, we can still adjust. I'm gonna leave it at 7. And then we have a margin that we can adjust as well. So we're going to our paragraph settings, down to our search, go to text area. Then we can go ahead and kind of increase the distance between the letters and the edge of the bubble. There we go. So it looks a little bit better. You can kind of compare yourself to see which you like, which you don't like. I think this looks pretty good. All right, so that's Now that we have basically our little master files here, I'm going to open up one of my comic pages. We can just copy and paste these in there just so I can show you. Alright, so you can see here, this is my comic that's only available in a newsletter, just so you know. I have the word balloons. These were all done within Krita, just testing things out to see how I could get things done quickly, how I liked how everything looked, and for the most part, everything worked out the way I wanted. I'm going to just take those off. I'm going to make a new vector layer. We're going to go back to our master file here and say we like this word balloon that we just made, and we're going to just Control C and Control V into our new file, and we can scale the whole thing down if we want. We're just gonna kind of pretend like it's accurate. And now we have our comic, and it's pretty much, we'll just pretend it's done. So I think this worked out really well. I think it's really nice that you can just copy and paste everything in there. All right, so now we can copy and paste our word balloons and everything in here. We're pretty much all set for making comics in Krita going forward. So your homework for today is basically to make your own master file for your word balloons. Start making a variety of different bubbles and then different tails here, and find ways to merge them. Find even examples online of shapes and styles that you like. Maybe you're doing a more sci-fi comic and you want a more sci-fi look. Take a look at those word balloons, see if there's any like unique elements to them, and try to copy those or mimic them in Krita for your own style. And that's really it. So thank you guys for watching this video. If you know someone who's creating comics or would like to and is trying to get used to Krita's user interface and how to do things, make sure that you share this video with them. I think it would help them a lot. If you have any questions, as always, leave them down in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them, and I will see you in the next video.